silence. That's often the first thing people notice when they fall in love with someone who has avoidant tendencies. The messages get slower. The warmth feels colder. The connection starts to fade into a kind of quiet that feels personal, like rejection dressed up as restraint. And in that silence, the anxious part of us starts writing stories. They've lost interest. They don't care. They're done. But here's the thing. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, silence isn't always a sign of disinterest. It's often a sign of overstimulation, of emotional overwhelm. When they love deeply, they feel deeply, and for someone who's built their identity on control and independence, those emotions can feel like an internal storm. Avoidants don't withdraw because they don't care. They withdraw because they care too much and don't know how to handle the flood that love brings. For them, intimacy is both a desire and a danger. It triggers an internal alarm system that's been wired since childhood. The moment closeness forms, their mind whispers, you're about to lose yourself. So they do what feels safe, they step back, they create space, they regulate from a distance. It's not about you. It's about them trying to calm the noise inside their own nervous system. We have to understand this through a psychological lens. Avoidant individuals often grew up in environments where emotional expression wasn't encouraged, where vulnerability was seen as weakness, or where affection was inconsistent. So their brain learned a simple survival rule: don't depend too much, don't feel too much, don't need too much. Now fast forward to adulthood. When love arrives, it awakens all the parts of them that they've spent years suppressing. The attachment system activates, and with it comes confusion, fear, and longing all at once. To someone securely attached, love feels like warmth. To an avoidant, love can feel like fire, beautiful, but dangerous. It burns through their defenses and forces them to confront emotions they've never been taught to manage. That's why when you see them retreat, it's not rejection, it's a form of emotional self-protection. It's their attempt to stay in control, to breathe, to feel safe again. But here's where it gets interesting. Even in their silence, they're thinking of you. They're analyzing every word, every interaction, every emotional cue, not because they're cold, but because they're cautious. Their withdrawal isn't about creating distance. It's about processing connection. It's their mind's way of saying, I need a moment to make sense of what I'm feeling. And that's something we rarely give them credit for. That behind the stillness, there's thought, there's care, there's love trying to survive its own fear. The biggest mistake we make when dealing with an avoidant partner is taking their silence personally. We start chasing, questioning, demanding answers, thinking if we push harder, they'll open up. But for an avoidant, that pressure feels like suffocation. They interpret pursuit as threat. The more we push, the more they pull away. What they really need isn't interrogation, it's understanding. They need someone who can hold emotional space without forcing them to fill it. That doesn't mean tolerating neglect or accepting emotional unavailability. It means recognizing that sometimes love looks different when fear is part of the picture. For an avoidant, pulling back can be their way of staying in the relationship rather than abandoning it completely. It's counterintuitive, but stepping away allows them to stay connected on their terms. They need to feel that they can have both closeness and autonomy, intimacy and independence. Without that balance, they feel trapped. From a philosophical standpoint, avoidance is the soul's attempt to protect itself from annihilation. When someone has learned to survive through detachment, love threatens their identity. It asks them to dismantle the walls that once kept them safe. So, when they withdraw, what you're witnessing isn't coldness, it's transformation. It's the moment before the caterpillar becomes a butterfly, when everything feels chaotic inside. And just like transformation, it can't be rushed. It has to unfold at its own pace. Think of it this way. Their silence is not an absence of emotion, but a language of its own. It says, I'm here, but I need a moment to feel safe in this closeness. It's easy to misinterpret that as avoidance, but it's really a sign of love tangled with fear. The paradox of the avoidant heart is that the closer they feel to someone, the more they fear losing themselves. Love exposes them to the one thing they've spent their entire life avoiding: vulnerability. And yet love has this incredible power to rewrite emotional programming. When met with patience, safety, and consistency, the avoidant slowly learns that connection doesn't mean captivity. They learn that intimacy can exist without the loss of self. That's the quiet miracle that happens when someone refuses to take their silence personally. When someone sees their distance not as disinterest, but as a cry for space to heal. The truth is, emotional intimacy is a skill, not an instinct for someone with avoidant tendencies. It's learned through experience, through moments of connection that don't demand, through presence that doesn't overwhelm. When they start to feel that love doesn't threaten their freedom, they begin to soften. And that softening, that small willingness to stay, even when it scares them, is love in its purest, most courageous form. So, when you find yourself facing the silence of an avoidant partner, take a breath before assuming rejection. Look beneath the stillness. There's emotion there, tightly held but deeply real. Don't chase it, respect it. Because the very act of pulling away might just be their way of holding on. And maybe that's what love is for them, not loud, not expressive, but steady and self-preserving. Love that whispers instead of shouts. Love that hides not because it doesn't exist, but because it's learning how to feel safe being seen. In the end, silence doesn't always mean absence. Sometimes it means presence that's too intense to articulate. Sometimes it's the heart's way of saying, I feel too much, too fast. And if you can hold that space, if you can see through the silence, you'll realize something powerful. They were never avoiding you. They were just trying to find the courage to love you without losing themselves. When we talk about love, most people imagine it as a natural flow, effortless, warm, and inviting. But for someone with avoidant tendencies, love is not an open door. It's a threshold they stand before for a long time, hesitating, heart pounding, wondering if they'll be safe once they step through. So, when an avoidant chooses to stay, despite every instinct screaming for escape, that's not hesitation, that's heroism. Because what looks small to the outside world, like sending a text first or showing up to meet you after a disagreement, is often a massive internal battle for them. Avoidants live between two powerful drives, the need for connection and the need for independence. These forces pull them in opposite directions. The first says, I want to love and be loved. The second says, if I get too close, I'll lose myself. When they fall in love, these voices collide. Every time they choose to stay, to remain present, to reach out, they are consciously defying the second voice. And that's something remarkable, because it means love is speaking louder than fear. From a psychological standpoint, staying is not natural for an avoidant. Their attachment system was wired to self-protect. It's built on the belief that closeness leads to pain or loss of autonomy. That belief doesn't vanish just because they meet someone they care about. Instead, it becomes a silent battlefield, a test between emotional desire and self-preservation. So when you see them leaning in, initiating conversations, or letting you into small corners of their life, that's love overcoming conditioning. It's not about comfort, it's about courage. We often think love should look like passion, like fireworks and declarations. But for the avoidant, love rarely comes in grand gestures. It comes quietly. It comes as restraint, as staying when it's easier to run. It comes as trying to communicate when words feel dangerous. It comes as showing up, even if they don't know how to show emotion perfectly. Their love is not always loud, but it's real and it's brave. The truth is, most avoidants are acutely self-aware. They know their patterns. They know they withdraw, they know they pull back. And they often hate themselves for it. So when they choose to resist those impulses, to remain engaged, they're actively fighting against the old version of themselves. That's not avoidance, that's transformation. It's the moment where growth begins, In the discomfort, in the contradiction, in the staying. Philosophically, love is not about comfort. It's about expansion. It challenges us to step beyond our patterns and evolve. For the avoidant, that evolution means learning to coexist with vulnerability rather than running from it. Each time they allow closeness, they're rewriting their own emotional script. They're saying, maybe it's safe now. Maybe I can be close and still be me. That small shift in belief is monumental, because once love stops being a threat and starts being a choice, that's when healing begins. Think of an avoidance love like a slow sunrise. At first, it's faint, cautious, tentative, barely visible. But with patience, it brightens. Their actions start to speak. They remember the things you care about. They adjust small habits. They compromise even when it feels unnatural. These might not be grand romantic gestures, but they are deeply significant. They're signs that they're learning to trust the connection. And for someone who has spent their life equating dependence with danger, that trust is everything. The challenge, though, is that avoidants often don't express this process out loud. They won't tell you, I'm scared, but I'm trying. You'll have to read it in their behavior, in the way they choose to stay instead of ghosting, in the way they listen more, even when it's hard. Their love is shown in moments that look ordinary, but for them, are extraordinary. And here's something worth understanding. When an avoidant starts to stay longer than they used to, it's not because they suddenly became secure. It's because they're beginning to feel emotionally safe with you. Safety is the language of love for avoidance. It's not about excitement, it's about calm. The less judged they feel, the less they need to run. The less pressured they feel, the more they want to open up. Love for them isn't a feeling that sweeps them away. It's a slow building of safety that makes them want to stay grounded. So, when you notice those subtle changes, when they reach out first, when they start sharing more than surface level things, when they allow you to see glimpses of their inner world, those are not random acts. They are signs of love. For them, every step closer is a small act of defiance against fear. Every moment they stay present is their heart learning to trust again. And this is where compassion plays a crucial role. It's easy to get frustrated with avoidance. Their inconsistency can feel like rejection. But love, in its highest form, isn't about reacting, it's about understanding. It's about recognizing that staying for them is the equivalent of saying, I'm choosing you, even though it scares me. That choice deserves to be seen, not criticized. At the same time, this doesn't mean accepting emotional distance indefinitely. It means learning to see progress where others might see imperfection. Growth for an avoidant is measured in inches, not miles. What they need isn't someone to pull them forward, but someone who can walk beside them while they learn the rhythm of connection. There's also something deeply philosophical about this kind of love. It's love as practice, not performance. It's love that exists not because it feels easy, but because it feels worth it. The avoidant learns that closeness doesn't have